Hi everybody, welcome back. Glad you could tune in again. It seems to me likely that the church in general has a problem with masculinity. And I want to spend a minute or two exploring what that problem might be before spending a minute or two more looking at the book of Ruth to see how scripture actually portrays a more helpful set of solutions to the problems that I'm going to identify than we often are able to come up with. The problems first. It has been noted in many different quarters in recent years that many churches are somewhat effeminate in their outlook. I think what people mean by that, the critics that is that perhaps the style of worship or the form of the piety, the way that faith is expressed, are somewhat effeminate or feminine in orientation. And I'm not entirely sure what people mean by that. And in part, maybe that's because it's difficult to even define femininity or effeminacy in the abstract. But nonetheless, it's certainly true that there are more Christian women in evangelical or Bible-believing churches than there are Christian men. That's a statistical fact that we can't get away from. And even if we can't put our finger on what people mean by effeminacy and in what sense some churches or some Christians are encouraged, even if they're men, to embrace a more effeminate piety, it's nonetheless worth having a think about what that might mean. Unfortunately, sometimes the cure seems to be worse than the disease, and this is something that I have observed, where Christian men are acutely conscious of the danger of becoming effeminate, whatever that might mean, and perhaps it is a genuine danger. And so in an attempt to avoid that, they swing across to the opposite extreme and embrace patterns of life which, I don't want to caricature too much, but it's not necessary to caricature very much. Patterns of life which amount to a kind of sanctified chest thumping, where the form that Christian masculinity takes is restricted and caricatured to a very narrow range of pursuits and interests and subjects of conversation even, which is certainly a lot narrower than the range of character traits that, according to Scripture, are reflected in true Christian masculinity. It turns out that, according to the Bible, being a Christian man is not being a Christian version of whatever the world thinks is manly. Being a Christian man involves a set of distinct character traits which we are as men to seek to observe in good role models, scriptural role models of course, and others, and then emulate, especially in our relationships with women. And to that end, I want to turn briefly to Ruth chapter 2, where we see the example of Boaz, who displays some of these characteristics very, very clearly indeed. Let me just highlight a couple of them for you. In the book of Ruth chapter 2, you know what's happened. Ruth has already gone out to the field, and whom should she meet but Boaz, the man who came from Bethlehem, chapter 2, verse 4. And what I want you to notice, before even Boaz meets Ruth, we get a conversation between Boaz and his workers, or his staff, I guess, in the field. And it runs like this: "The Lord be with you," Boaz said. And in reply, they answered, "The Lord bless you." And I just want to pause there for 1 second and think about what that means. This is in Bethlehem, in the days of the Judges. And if you want to know what Bethlehem is like in the days of the Judges, then you need to turn back to Judges chapter 19 and read about the brutality and immorality and carnage that tore that small town and the surrounding regions apart in this era of history. It was a depraved and evil place. Particularly, it was not a place where a young woman would want to be alone for very long. More on that in a second. And what that means is it's all the more remarkable, not only that Boaz should, so to speak, announce his character with his very first words, "The Lord be with you," but that also his staff, his workers in his fields, should reply in a similar way. "The Lord bless you." The Lord is the first name on Boaz's lips, and the Lord is the first name on theirs as they reply. Now, what does that mean that Boaz has done? What kind of man is he? Well, there are two options. Either he is such a godly man that he has attracted to him as his staff what few faithful Israelites there may be in the region, and they've joined his staff, and so this is natural to them, just as it appears to be natural to him to speak the Lord's name in greeting. Or he is such a godly man that, despite the fact that he is the only man like that in Bethlehem, he has hired some men to work for him, and so transformed their character by the force of his example that they have actually now become godly like him. Either he's attractive to godly men, or he's an influence over ungodly men, so that they are led to honour and worship the Lord faithfully like he does. Those are the only conclusions we can possibly draw from this opening exchange between Boaz and his staff in Ruth chapter 2. And it is a remarkable testimony. It is so easy for us to think, isn't it, as men, that in our secular world, perhaps in your secular workplace, or sports clubs that you go to, or other social contexts you find yourself in, the weight of the ungodliness around you is just too great for you to have any impact on. And perhaps it is, humanly speaking, too great. But by the grace of God, it is not too great for him. Boaz here stands as an example of a man who, by his integrity and godliness and faithfulness, so shaped those around him that they were led to reflect the godly character that he exhibited, or he simply attracted such godly men as there were from the surrounding area to work for him, because, hey, they wouldn't want to work for anybody else. You discover what the rest of the farms in Bethlehem were like at the end of the chapter. In anybody else's field, Naomi remarks, Ruth would be likely to be assaulted. She'll be safe with Boaz. That's the kind of man he is. Not chest-thumping, not this caricatured, shrunken kind of masculinity, which is really borrowed from worldliness and then a Christian veneer painted over the top. This is deep Christian integrity that makes itself visible and shapes the world around him. That is the way, one of the ways, to be a faithful Christian man. The Lord bless you, and I hope very much to see you all very soon. Bye for now.